Claudio. Welcome to Habit Over Why, the premiere episode. In this episode, I'm sitting down with the other host, Claudio Bortolucci. He's a retired principal, elite athlete, as I like to call him, personal mentor to me, to explore the art of practical leadership. Claudio spent over 30 years guiding schools in the Burnaby School District. He's known for his ability to turn complex challenges into simple, actionable principles. In this episode, we'll dive into his belief about what isn't great leadership isn't just about the why we do things, it's about how we make them happen. From his early competitive soccer player days to his decades of experience in education, Claudio shares real strategies to build trust, navigate change, and lead with courage and care. Whether you're managing a team, mentoring others, or simply trying to lead your own life more intentionally, this conversation offers grounded wisdom you can use right away. Welcome, Claudio.
Wow, I'm flattered, Jeevan. That's lots of praise to live up to. I don't know if I can actually pony up after all of that stuff, but I'll try. I'll
Well,
try.
if you can teach this young boys a few tricks to get him into a VP, I'm sure you're doing quite well. All right, so
Okay,
I
well,
want to jump right into this. Like I said, this is
yeah.
our first episode for Habit Over Why. Why Habit Over Why? Why did we choose that name?
Well, a bit of the context and background is Jeevan joined me at a school as a head teacher, and in that context, he had a classroom, but he also had a leadership administrative responsibility in the school. So when you get to know somebody by sharing, philosophies, beliefs, those kinds of things. And for me, it was a way to get Jeevan to understand how I actually lead. And I lead by finding out why and what, but I always look for the how. And most of my hows are not just, hmm, this is my idea. Most of my hows are founded in research or data that's been collected from the school, a trend that's happening on the playground or with teachers and reading. So once you have that initial aha moment and then you start to dig into it a little, then you can start to unpackage from why and what the how. And then the how is much easier because you have practical strategies that you can actually use to build capacity and help people understand your vision and where it is that you want to go with a specific topic or a specific strategy or an event for that matter. So,
I would totally agree. Like one thing when you called me up and when we talked about starting this podcast, what got me excited was that in today's age, there's so much literature, so many podcasts out there, so many things out there that kind of go through the why. And we always talk about the beginning of the journey starts with why. And then as you get into the journey, you get challenges, you have difficulties, and that's where the how comes in. You need actionable things that you can actually do without having to dig deep sometimes. So that's why the podcast just resonated with me. Now, one thing that I noticed right away working with Claudio is he's very eloquent with his words. You have wordsmithed complex situations, challenges into few phrases. And I use this with my sons, actually. I have two sons, you know them, Rian and Amir. You believe that life works on simple principles. Now, take us through that.
there's all kinds of catchphrases we hear growing up, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Have others do unto you as you would do unto them. And I think if you take these sayings at face value and you combine them into um, a principle or simple principles, you really understand that the world is a simple place. And if you create these simple principles that you want to adhere to, that your life and your job, your purpose in what you do at home and at work, they will resonate with you and the people around you. And they're always founded in the moral compass. What is the moral thing to do? And again, you would have a bias, but I would have a bias too. But I mean, if I said to you, even go walk out in the middle of the road and just stand there for 5 minutes, your response to me would be, Claudio, you're stupid. I'm not going to stand in the road for 5 minutes because I'm going to get hit by a car. So the simple principle is, you know, watch what you're doing and be careful when you're around the road. And I think if we parcel that kind of language and phrasing out, and you know that what I try always to do is take a not a roadside view, but a 10,000-foot view. So I'll always take a step back and look at the situation from multiple perspectives or come up with the encompassing phrase that embodies a large context of material.
Yeah, and that's when you use the word perspective, that's one of the biggest things that I gained, and that's something that I've been looking into recently is perspective and perception. And I find what is your experience with perception? So I'm just going to define those. So perception is you're walking through the world and you're making up simple principles for yourself, and those are based on your experience. You taught me as a leader, and I've learned as a leader that everyone comes in with their own perspective. But perception is when you take that perspective and take other perspectives, and then you make a balanced decision. Now, I want you to, one of the simple principles, the very first one that you taught me was personal versus professional. Again,
Mhm.
personal versus
So,
professional. So let's go through that. Let's or
yeah.
give a situation, maybe a challenging situation where you went through where you kind of use that. So we're talking about the how now, people. We're talking about this is a practical strategy or phrase that you can use when you're talking to a person, having a difficult conversation with a person.
Well, I'll give you the context and where it came from, and then I'm gonna let you actually give them a phrase or a situation when you actually used it, because I think there's more power in the shared experience here than it is in me just saying what it is. So the concept started with the concept of autonomy. And we know that in education, autonomy is a huge thing for teachers. The problem is that through the semantics of language, teachers take the word autonomy and they misuse it. They misuse it in the sense that there's a personal pros first autonomy, and then there's a professional place for autonomy. But teachers will say, well, it's my autonomous right to do this. And it's actually a personal perspective, not a professional perspective. And then that becomes the norm for that person. So I will always clarify with somebody, as you know,
Yeah,
that, this is not about your personal autonomy. This is about your professional autonomy and the roles and responsibilities you have within the professional autonomy that has been given to you as a teacher. And don't confuse the two, because if you confuse the two, I'll help you understand the difference between the professional and the personal.
definitely.
So
So you're throwing it back in my court here?
you've got lots of examples because you keep telling me about them.
Yeah, so like I mean there's tons. It's hard when you're put on the spot a little bit here, but I mean a simple one would be and this is in the teaching world. This is in the education world. Just making schedules. So when we're making schedules, people come to you and say, "Hey, look, so say I'm going to take a recess schedule right now." So you have teachers who are on recess duty and there's different ways to do it and you know what? It has to fit the actual confines of the actual school environment. What works for a majority of the people? What works for the kids? At the end of the day, when I am making decisions, the last question I ask myself is how is this benefiting the children? Is this benefiting the children? New to the school, I come in, they want the system changed for recess schedule. I say, okay, that's not a big deal. Like let's change it up. I thought it was not a big deal. But what was happening was they were in a system, a two-tiered system where in the first half of the year, the first half of the people went. Second half of the year, it got converted over just after winter time. Then you had some other people go. So what was happening was some people. we're stuck with the worst weather. And so when the person came to me, they were talking to me about how all the benefits of it, but they kind of forgot to explain the history or culture around it. I came to you, I talked to you about it, you filled me in on the history, had to recap with that individual, and that's when you had taught me personal and professional. I went back, had another conversation, talked to that person about why the current system exists, and they knew it, and had the conversation around personally, I understand that you don't want to have this time, but professionally, we're doing this because it works for the whole school. So that's just a simple example in a school
But
that
I think that's a really good example, Jeevan, because I mean, and we've talked about this a thousand times as well, that in the context of that simple principle, it can be applied a thousand times over a thousand different ways. But the communication is the key piece in all of that that you're doing
yes,
and creating the common understanding of the difference between the two.
we will we'll do an episode on communication, you
We
bet.
will.
Communication is huge. I mean, professionally and personally, you can also use that. I've used that with families too.
So do I.
When you have a difficult or challenged conversation with a parent, because you can agree with that parent, you can agree with what they're saying, you can validate what they're saying on a personal level, and then go into explaining professionally, these are the confines that I'm working within. So this is the reason why I made that decision. Some people will never be happy with it, but most people will go back and think about it, and they'll at least may not agree, but they'll kind of understand why that decision was made.
And I want to come back to your point about the difference between perception and perspective, because I think what those two P words have in common and in difference is that they're talking about a point of view, but one is talking about your point of view, and the other one is talking about a person's vision of you and their understanding of you as a person. So that perception might not match the reality of what you are as a person, but those words are out there and people hear them and automatically they make an assumption about you as a person from that perspective.
Perceived reality, right?
Perceived reality, right?
Yes.
One of those
Ex-
simple principles that we've talked about in detail for a number of times.
Now, just for the interest of, I know people are going to want to watch this. I'm hoping people are going to want to watch this. And these are things that we will be diving into. So we're just giving you a glimpse of actual strategies that you can use, the how over the why. And we're going over both. Now, I do want to go back because it's an introductory premiere episode, talk about Claudio himself. He didn't just teach and lead for over 30 years. Claudio, you are also an elite soccer player. Okay. I want you to talk about that. And I want you to just talk about your early experiences as a soccer player that shaped your approach to leadership and what lessons from the field that still guided you through your leadership in a school or still guide you today.
Yeah, I think being on a team teaches a person a lot.
Not just any team, though. Tell them what teams you.
Well, I did. I played on the national team for a few years,
Yeah.
and I did play professionally, but not for a very long time. But in my youth, I was a very elite athlete, and I learned a lot about life during that time. I learned about resiliency and perseverance for me to stay fit and be the best player that I could be by learning strategies and reading the game and understanding the tactics to the game. Politically, sports are very high profile. So when you are an elite athlete, there's a whole political realm that you're invested in too, whether you like it or not. And I would say, as far as simple principles go, that everything has two aspects to it. There's the business of sport, and then there's the sport of sport. There's the business of education, there's the learning of education. There's the organizational structure that your company has and how you take care of your employees. I think you have to understand that an entity is not an entity in and unto itself. It has various components that you work with. And sports was the catalyst to teach me that. After I left the game at the high level, I wanted to give back to the game. So I started to coach. And because I was a national player, I had a carded coaching certificate. And I took that certificate and I coached two different club teams, to one to a provincial championship and another one to a national championship. And those were times when I fortified my life and learning to become who I am today. And I understood what sports and teams meant to people. In fact, I took an acronym from the concept of team that I used in a lot of my teaching opportunities and leadership opportunities. And I know I shared it with Jeevan, but the word team stands for together, everyone accomplishes more. And if you live by that mantra as a vision statement, as a mission statement, when people hear that and they see you actively engaged in doing the things that need to be done, the how, then you get more buy-in from the people that you're working with. They see that you are invested. You'll go to the classroom to help. You'll sweep the floor that needs to be swept. You'll give somebody a 20-minute coffee break when they're busy working. And it applies to all businesses and organizations, not just public education. And so I think that's the other big message in the beginning that I want to send to people about our how, is that we look at it predominantly from an educational perspective. I can tell you that all of these things that we're going to talk about apply to organizations,
It,
to groups, to
let's
business.
let me piggyback off that. With your, I didn't know that you actually coached too. I did not know that story. So that's awesome. So whether you're a coach or whether you're a player, right? You go through tough losses, team breakthroughs, coach insight. Tell us something that taught you to apply when leading teams today. Tell us like about a situation or maybe some insight a coach gave you or you gave to your teams that you took to the national championships that relate to maybe organizations or institutions or building leaders of tomorrow.
Okay. So I'll use a simple one that I took when I had this team. We were a very talented team. And these boys were just interested in kicking the ball down the field and chasing it. And I had two of the fastest players in the province on my team, so we would win games regardless. But I didn't want us to be a kick and chase team. I wanted us to be a possession based team. So we started doing some active drills around possession of the ball. And I told them that they weren't allowed to kick the ball down the field anymore. There had to be a process that they followed before a ball could be played to a forward position. We lost 4 games in a row after I told them this.
Yeah.
They were really upset with me because they knew how good they were.
Yeah.
But in the long run, after they understood the process that we were doing, and then we started winning games again, 5-2, 4-0, 3-1. But the games became easier to play because we had possession of the ball most of the time. So teams had a really tough time scoring against us because honestly, in a given Sunday on a day that we played, we would have possession of the ball for 70% of the time.
Which
So they understood the how, but it took some growing pains to get to that particular place.
Yeah, and
And
that's a good story because sometimes even if you know the how, you got to give it a chance, right? Like you gotta put it through its paces. You gotta let the team gel and then work through the pain before they get to where they want to be. So I know in schools in particular, because that's where I am most of the day, is and when you come in as a leader and you want to change certain things, as soon as the ball drops a little bit in the beginning, people start saying, "See, yeah, see, I told you so." But if you give it some time, patience and time, right? Patience and time. So that's an awesome example that that you just gave. Like it's pretty wicked, and especially for new leaders coming in, it's okay to fail, right? And our jobs as the experienced leaders are to make sure that we're there and tell them that it's okay. You tried something. This is a safe environment. be transparent with everybody, like, hey, this is what we're trying. It may work, it may not work, but at the end of the day, we're trying our best, and you're giving that emerging leader the chance and the open dialogue.
And your point about failure is important because the best learning comes from failure. The
Yeah,
best learning comes from failure. And
yeah,
so people have to grasp that and understand that you got to be a risk taker. And to
yeah.
take a risk means there's a chance you might fail.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's a mindset that you have to be open and ready to access.
yeah. And the simple principle is short-term pain for long-term gain is what you're
There
trying
you
to
go.
teach the boys is like, okay, you know what? These two guys are great and we can win all the time. That's fine. But if you want the team to succeed over a long period of time, we got to bring everybody up. Because
So
I find it, yeah, go ahead.
we could use that example and bring it to a business context because your initial question was, can give us an
Yeah.
example. Well, you think of two marketing or salespeople in your group of 12 that are leading the charge all the time, and the other 8 people or 10 people aren't really doing very much, but hey, they're happy to be there. But couldn't you instill a bigger sense of purpose for them or success for them if you involve them in some kind of a strategy where we talked about teaching each other specific skills in a marketing area that you might not have strength in, but someone else on your team does. So, you build capacity that way by building the belonging piece,
Oh, yeah.
something that's my, the
That's your
thing that
baby.
I'll cling to. That's my baby. I'll talk about belonging. We'll talk about belonging throughout this podcast. The longer it goes on, the more research I do, the more I am inspired by the things that I hear from a social emotional leadership perspective,
Yeah.
and not just a bottom line, but really getting to know people, building relationships, and creating that belonging piece with people. So how do you create belonging? Well, we're here to show you and tell you how that can be done.
Yeah. And even documenting your journey as an emerging leader. So like that's one thing that you taught me about it. And folks, we don't have enough time to do it now, but we will do it in another episode about how to document your journey as a leader because you are going to fail. It's part of the process. If you have not failed or you don't think you failed, then you need to get some perspective and perception, right? Like you got it's coming from your own perspective, but you got to get that perception out there. Like you have to ask other people. You have to go into, well, and we'll go into that deep diving into how do you get feedback from employees? How do you get feedback from the people above you, from the people below you, from the people beside you, from in schools, the parent community? So we will go through that. Claudia, how do you teach, especially emerging learners? Because sitting in a room now, I'm not the youngest person in that room anymore. I'm kind of middle to and hopefully end of my career. When you're sitting in those rooms and I see new emerging leaders coming up in schools, a lot of them are this new generation is awesome because they are emotionally, I feel like they understand themselves. So emotionally, they understand situational emotional level. But what they want is the how. Is like, what do you mean? Like, I just need to know how you do this. So, how do you get emerging leaders to shift their mindset, the ones that are stuck in the why to the how? So how do you get them to, or even the people around them in the organization? Because I find as an organization, we talk a lot about the why and not the how.
Yeah, I think that that's a mindset, a cognitive shift that not many people are ready to do yet. I mean, and I think for me, it took a while, but I had an open mind and I was willing to ask those critical questions of myself and ask for feedback. And I think people want a quick answer to the problem. There's never a quick answer to a problem. A problem requires some digging, some reflection, but it also requires time and energy. I think leaders don't do that often enough. They don't, there's an old adage, it's ready, aim, fire. But Michael Fullan will tell you it should be ready, fire, aim. And I think contextually, a situation that you're in is a piece of the puzzle. because that same problem with a minor tweak to it might approach you again at a later date. And yet, from your experience, you should be able to understand the context and then move forward in a direction that is thoughtful and constructive enough. You and I have talked about Kolb's experiential learning, and that's, something that I use in my thinking, along with Carol Dweck and some of the other researchers that we've talked about and dug into. But metacognitively, you train yourself to look at your thinking and analyze your own thinking. It takes a lot of time and work, but that's somewhere that people need to start, is asking themselves a thinking question about their own thinking, and how does that actually? Why am I reacting the way I am?
Yeah. And I think that was a game changer for me. Like when I was tapped on the shoulder to first to become a head teacher, it was based on my moral compass. And that's something that an administrator had said at that time. They're like, and they didn't use the words moral compass. That's what you taught me. But they said, you're ethical and you'll make the decisions based not on what you need, but what the whole team needs. As I went on to do my master's and actually go through that switch of what I call becoming a leader to lead, is I realized that a lot of it had to do with my own transformative change. So how do I reflect when I am I because most of the time you act emotionally. So you have to take a step back and assess the situation. And Kolb's it's another how strategy on how to step back, think about the situation, research the situation, talk to people about the situation, and then change it from your own perspective to have perception on the situation and make the best choice available at that time. So that's something that I, yeah, truly believe in is like, and one thing that caught my eye when because I was also taught as a young leader that, hey, you know what? Theory is just theory. It's just something that's out there. It does not work. Probably from a person that doesn't read a lot or doesn't watch podcasts and things like that. You learn on the job. And that was probably a moment where I had not so great advice from a leader. Um, and when I came to you, one of the things I noticed is all the books in your room, how well read you are. And one of the things that you taught me is no, Jeevan, it's your job. It's if you enjoy reading, it's a way to actually transform yourself into a great leader. And then that's when we started a book club. And then we did the book on conversations. And then we went on there and then documenting. So these are all strategies that we're going to talk about in the how. Any parting words? So anything you want to say to our audience, anything you want to say to me, what you're excited about, what comes next?
Yeah, and the more we talk, the more, excited you get. But I think the more, what resonates to me is that what we're doing is the right thing, to give people the tools and the toolkit to actually be a good leader for a company, an organization, a school district. That there's not enough leaders in this world, and people will get afraid to lead because they've been said something that doesn't really resonate with them, or they've been told something, and yet they took the risk to do something as a leader. And I think that we need to show and share with people that there are tools out there for you to use, and there's a language out there for you to use. And once you understand the process and the language, and you can start bringing it together, fitting the pieces together, the language that you use becomes simple and repetitive, and it fits. It just fits into place. And then you can start being creative, like overly creative and innovative in areas, because you have the language and the expertise and the people that want to invest and try things. And I think that leading is a talent that's, A lot of people have it, but it can be learned and it can be embraced. And you don't have to lead from in front. You can lead from behind. You can lead in the middle. You just have to understand the concept of leadership. And I think if you look at it through the lens of social emotional leadership and learning, that you will be a better person, personally and professionally. And the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah. And one thing I want our audience to know is and takeaway that they have is we are on your side. We want you to succeed. So I do have a task for you is if you are watching this, it's obviously something that's piqued your interest. Please like and subscribe. We will be putting up our channels. We'll be putting up our hashtags. So like and subscribe. Also, habitoverwhy@gmail.com is our email address. Please send us an email with comments, questions. We would love to have questions, burning questions of what you are going through, what you want to know, so that we can make our episodes even better, tailored to what you would like to know. I was lucky enough to have Claudio as a mentor. I've had follow-up mentors in the education world and outside the education world, and they're invaluable. And I wouldn't be sitting here. We went from him being my boss to him being my friend, and then to my kids, he's still Mr. Claudio, especially my older son. And we are here. I was so excited, Claudio, when we decided to do this and we talked about it. Thank you for letting me host with you. And I guess the next episode is my turn. I'm in the hot seat.
I got some questions for you.
Nice. So, Habit Over Why. Thank you very much, everybody. We will see you next time.